Welcome to Complete BS, the official podcast of couch coaches everywhere. Not just football. It's every sport that ruins your parlay, wrecks your fantasy week, and still brings you back for more. Buzzer beaters, blown leads, and brackets and flames. Yeah, we're all over it. Unfiltered takes, armchair analysis, and enough bold opinions to fill a playbook. Hosted by Brian Schmuck, sports junkie, the Saban of stats and your official voice of, I could coach better than that. Let's go.
Couch Coach Nation, here we go into week 12 of the college football season. We've got a great slate of games starting off Thursday night with a good one in the Sun Belt. Troy at Old Dominion. ODU's a 10.5-point favorite, but Troy needs to win in order to hold on to a shot of making the conference championship game. So a lot of interest there Thursday night. Friday night, Clemson's going to Louisville where the Cards are a 2.5-point home favorite. And late Friday night, Minnesota's a huge underdog to Oregon, who's looking to get their offense back on track. On Saturday, we've got 4 ranked versus ranked matchups in the noon window. I counted 5 games that I'm interested in, either because they're going to be a really good game, or you've got a Heisman contender maybe looking to put up some big stats and maybe pad their case for being a Heisman Trophy finalist. At 3:30, there's 4 games that look to be very good with conference and playoff implications. And then at 7, all eyes are going to be on Texas and Georgia. That's the big game of the night there. But don't go to sleep. That 10 o'clock window, there are 2 really good games, TCU at BYU and Boise State, San Diego State. We've got another weekend of college football nirvana, 12 plus hours of football. AV, are you ready?
I'm ready, man. We're in November. I'm here for it. Every week, the stakes get higher and higher for these teams. And the 12-team playoff is interesting. Some of these games that, people aren't necessarily fighting for conference championships, but still mean a lot to different scenarios for the playoffs. So looking forward to it, man.
Well, let's jump into one of those games right now with USF at Navy. These are 2 of the 5 American Conference teams that only have 1 loss. But these teams are going in opposite directions. USF rebounded nicely last week after their loss to Memphis by beating UTSA 55-23. Navy, they've dropped 2 in a row, and their do-everything quarterback Blake Horvath is banged up and may not play. The last time USF's Byron Brown played Navy was back in 2023, and he had a day, 338 yards and 3 touchdowns. Navy needs to keep this close, because if they get down 2 scores, it's going to be really hard for them to get back in it because they don't pass very much. They've thrown the ball only 125 times this season compared to over 400 rushing attempts. The Bulls get up early and secure a big win, 42-31. AV, how do you see this game going?
Well, before I get into the game, let's talk real quick about the G5 playoff picture. Me and you mentioned that quite a bit, and it's interesting to us, but so let me throw a little clarity around it. So the way the college football playoff rule reads is it's the top 5 ranked conference champions. So that guarantees a G5 spot, and it depends on who's ranked the highest. Currently, that's USF. The College Football Committee has them 24th, and they're in first place of the AAC. Now, they're tied in first place in the athletic conference, but they hold the tiebreakers. So if they win out, they're going to be the American Conference champion, and probably the highest ranked group of 5. The only other conference that has a team at the top that I think could pass the American champion is the Sun Belt. You got James Madison sitting at 8-1 overall. They're ranked in the AP poll, but not the college football playoff poll. The other 3 conferences, Mountain West has San Diego State at top. Mid-American, the MAC has Western Michigan, and Conference USA has Kennesaw State. I think they're out. So it's between the American and the Sun Belt. Right now, between South Florida and James Madison, you have the conference championship game as well. So a lot can play out. The USF wins this game against Navy, and they are in a really good position. One thing I want to throw out there is when I talked about the wording of the rule being the top 5 rated conference champions, is there a world where Duke could win out and win the ACC championship against, like, say, Pitt, and have 0 good wins and losses against UConn and Tulane, and James Madison and South Florida be ranked ahead of them?
I think so.
That's wild to think, but it's not 0 possibility. It's more than that. So as far as this game goes, I think because of the importance to USF and where they sit and the matchup a little bit. So USF has a top 25 run defense in the nation. Now the Navy run offense is a little bit different with the option, but I think Todd Orlando is a good enough defensive coordinator to be creative and slow them down. So I'm going with USF to win the game 27-17, right on that 10 to 10.5 point line, the Vegas set. I think that's a good line.
And to your point, Duke right now, they're sitting at 5-4. I actually think they're going to beat Virginia this weekend at home
Yep.
and knock Virginia out of that race in the ACC. Duke's 3 of their 4 losses have come in out of conference play. That's why they're still in the race in the ACC. They're not even receiving votes in any of the polls. James Madison, while not ranked in the College Football Playoff Committee's poll, they are ranked in both the AP and the coaches poll, where Duke's not receiving votes. So absolutely, if Duke ends up winning the ACC, there is a possibility that the American champion and James Madison, the Sun Belt champion, could be ranked ahead of them, and your 5 highest ranked conference champions are your Big Ten, your SEC, Big 12, American, and Sun Belt, and the ACC is left out.
Well, check this out. So Duke plays Virginia this week, and then they play UNC and Wake Forest in the year. So 0 chance for them to jump people, right?
A lot of football to be played, and it's all going to sort itself out on the field. Talking about Pitt, they're hosting Notre Dame this weekend, and College Game Day must have someone new picking sites, because this is 2 weeks in a row that they're at a non-SEC game. It's the first time in 20 years that Pitt's hosting Game Day. Notre Dame's on a 7-game winning streak after starting 0-2. In those 7 games, they've won them all by 10-plus points. This game is for the playoffs for them. They only have Syracuse and Stanford after. They don't have a conference championship game, so if they win this game, they should be able to sleepwalk past Syracuse and Stanford, and they're in the playoffs. If they drop this game, they're done and out. Pitt, they're also 7-2, only ranked 23rd in the country. This is also part of the playoff conversation and the ACC conversation that we've been talking about, and can Pitt get in there? The game won't impact them for the playoffs because it's a non-conference game. They still have Georgia Tech and Miami remaining on their schedule, so this is a tough 3-game stretch at the end of the season. Pitt's Mason Heichel, he took over the starting job against Boston College, and the Panthers are 5-0. Since then, he's thrown for over 300 yards in 4 out of those 5 games. Notre Dame, they counter with their own freshman quarterback in C.J. Carr and Heisman contender Jeremiah Love, who has been dominant over their 7-game winning streak. And he's looking to break up that Heisman quarterback party. Everybody who's talking about your top Heisman contenders are all quarterbacks. Don't forget about Love. AV, what are your thoughts on this game?
I think you mentioned an interesting point that this game means everything to Notre Dame in terms of the playoff, and it means nothing to Pitt, which is a weird scenario for this game to be in. But, Pitt loses this game, they can still win out and still make the ACC championship game. That's got to be their first goal. So I think that plays into this game a little bit. Desmond Reed is still banged up. He's been banged up every week. He was seen in a boot recently. I think he's a questionable on the injury report, so we'll see how that plays out, but that's not good. Pitt's on a nice run. You said they're 7-2. They've won 5 in a row, but that 5 has been Florida State, North Carolina State, Syracuse, Stanford, and Boston College. So they haven't played anybody, but they're winning the games, but this will be a tough test for them. It'll be interesting to see if Mason Heichel can throw on Notre Dame quite a bit, because Pitt's top 10 in the country in throwing the ball. Notre Dame's secondary is a little bit suspect. So I think they will have some success in the air. I don't think it'll be enough. I've got Notre Dame 34-21.
I think both defenses are going to struggle in this game, and the total set at 55.5. I think that's really in jeopardy. I can't see either team being held to under 28 points. The game's really close. I was on the fence of picking Pitt to win this game, but at the end of the day, the best player on the field is Jeremiah Love, and I think he does something to seal the deal for the Irish. I've got Notre Dame 34-30. Oklahoma's going to Alabama, and if you believe in a revenge game, this is it. Last year, Bama lost 24-3 in humiliating fashion, and they will be looking to take it to Oklahoma. Oklahoma is 7-2. They're clinging to an outside shot of the playoffs, and a loss could end that conversation totally. Last week versus LSU, Alabama's offense looked stale, and as a whole team, they seemed disinterested to me in even playing the game. The OU defense has been strong most of the year. They can really put pressure on quarterbacks. They had 9 sacks against Auburn. On offense for Oklahoma, they haven't been the same since Mateer's hand injury, and last week they had a bye. Maybe he's got a little bit more time to get comfortable back into that offense. I do think that they're going to have some new wrinkles that they haven't shown this year, both offense offensively and defensively for Alabama coming off of that bye. So that'll be really interesting for me. Oklahoma, they may have found something finally in the ground with Xavier Robinson. He's got 224 yards rushing in their last 2 games. Before that, their rushing attack had been dismal all season. So that's one area that the Alabama defense can be taken advantage of, is on the ground. I expect a low-scoring first half of the game, partially due to Oklahoma's bye last week and some of those different looks that they'll show Alabama. But I think Alabama pulls ahead in the second half and gets a 27-20 win. AV, how do you see this one shaping up?
Who leads the SEC in defense and total defense and scoring defense. But the last 2 games they played, they gave up 34 to Ole Miss and 27 to Tennessee. I think their defense had feasted on some less than stellar offenses early on. I think Alabama is just an efficient team. I think they're one of the top 4 teams in the country. And offensively, I think that they find ways to get it done. And I love Ty Simpson. So I think their efficiency in the red zone will pull out some touchdowns while they're down there. I think the way OU wins this game is if they can pressure Ty Simpson, because they can get some sacks. Not only are they drive killers, but that also speeds him up, and it might get him off his game a little bit. If Alabama can keep Ty Simpson on his feet, or if he can scramble and buy some time, which I think they can and I think he can, then I see Alabama kind of winning another, professional game again. Like I said last week, I've got them winning 30-17 at home.
All right, and then we get to the 7 o'clock window, one of the biggest games of the day. A lot of people thought game day maybe should have been here. We've got Texas at Georgia, a night game in Athens. Georgia's a 6.5-point home favorite. This is their 3rd meeting in 13 months, and that's wild to think when Texas A&M has only played Georgia once in 14 years in the league. Clearly, the conferences are a little bit too big, but that's a conversation for another time. I'm not impressed, though, with Texas's 7-2 record. I don't think highly of their win over Oklahoma. John Mateer had just come off 17 days from hand surgery. He still looks impacted. They've got a ranked win over Vanderbilt, but Vanderbilt's lost to every team that's got a pulse. So I'm not real impressed with what Texas has done. This, to me, is a case of them being propped up because they're in the SEC. If you were to take their resume and put it on a different school, I don't think that they're ranked as high. I don't think that they're in the playoff conversation as 7-2. They're further back than that. Georgia, they do have a road win at Tennessee with a prolific offense, and they beat Ole Miss in a shootout. They can play low-scoring games, too, like they did against Auburn and Florida. AV, how do you like this game?
So I think this is the game of the weekend. I think it's a true trench game. The trenches are going to decide the game. Don't look now, but Arch Manning is starting to play like a real quarterback. He had his best game of his career last week. He threw for over 300 yards, very efficient. And the reason he did that is because the Texas offensive line kept him on his feet. They had 0 sacks in that game against Arch Manning. The reason I bring that up is, you know how many sacks Georgia as a team has on the season? 11. To compare that to like a defense that struggles, Florida State has 24 sacks this year. Georgia doesn't rush the passer at all against good teams, against bad teams. So I think Texas is going to give Arch Manning time. He's starting to come into his own. On the flip side, Georgia's best offensive games are when they run the ball. Texas has one of the best run defenses in the country. Now, the caveat to this is, and the thing that gives me a little pause is, Florida ran the ball all over Texas. So if Georgia does that, Georgia wins the game. But I'm going to go with Texas's ability to stop the run, Texas's ability to protect Arch Manning, and I say they go in and get the upset 24-21.
Wow. For me, this is an eye test game, and I've seen almost all of the games that both Texas and Georgia have played, and Georgia's just better. And they're at home, and it's at night between the hedges. I think this is a game that gets away from Texas, and I've got the Dogs winning by 14, 45-31. Well, let's get into AV's book club. Let's try and make some money here. What do we got in the book club?
SEC special this week. All 3 games are from the SEC. We talked about a couple of them, so I'm going to go Alabama minus 6.5 against Oklahoma. I think they just take care of business. They're at home. I think I might give 6.5 in a neutral site, much less at home. I'm going to take Texas plus the 6.5. I think they have a chance to beat Georgia. If you're going to give me the close to a touchdown, I'll take it. And then the third game that we didn't talk about was South Carolina. I'm going to take 19.5 points from Texas A&M. I think Texas A&M is one of the top 4 teams in the country, but I give credit to Shane Beamer. He usually has his team ready for these big games. They keep it close. They don't always win, but they keep these games close. Only lost by 20 once all season, and that was the Vanderbilt game when Sellers got hurt. So I'm going to take the 19.5 points and cross my fingers.
It'll be interesting to see in that game how that offense looks after they've fired their offensive coordinator. Bonus pick, I've got two for you this week, not just one. Let's start with Utah minus 10.5 at Baylor. Utah is 7-2 against the spread. Baylor's 2-7. Utah, they put up 39.6 points per game. They've got the number 8 scoring offense in the country. Baylor's 1-8 in their last 9 as a home underdog between 3.5 and 10 points. This is at 10.5. I think Utah has got way too much going on with Devin Dampier and Wayshawn Parker running the ball. They win this by 2 touchdowns easy. And then we've got UConn. They're a 7.5-point home favorite, bringing Air Force to Stores. UConn, they're 4-1 against the spread in the last 5 games. UConn's got a top 20 passing attack, and Air Force pass defense is suspect. Air Force is 1-3 against the spread in their last 4 road games. UConn has scored 34 points or more in 5 straight games. UConn is scoring a lot of points. Air Force, they are a triple option. Keep it on the ground. They're not passing the ball much. I think this is one where it can get away. And then what does Air Force do? This is something where UConn is winning by 10. That's everything for today. You can follow Complete BS Pod on X and Instagram, and make sure to like, share, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
Thanks for listening to Complete BS. Be sure to subscribe, share, and follow us online. And tell us what you think of this episode. Use hashtag CouchCoachNation, and let's keep the conversation going.